And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird right here from Awesemo.com. Dan Strafford and Chris Randone with you on this Monday morning, getting you ready for a 5-game main slate on Monday night. Chris, how the hell are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm looking at this pitching for this 5-game slate, and I'm not really too excited about it.
It ain't pretty. That is for damn sure. We'll get through it, though. What we'll do here, what we do on every DFS Early Bird, we're going to take a main look at starting pitching and remind you, of course, there's the MLB strategy show Monday morning. You get the deep dive written up. You get the deeper dive. You get live before lock. So lots of content over there at awesemo.com and on YouTube. And then behind the paywall, you get the deep dive right up. You also get projections. You can add on Fantasy Cruncher. You get the lineup builder. You get ownership projections. So there's a ton of stuff you can get. If you want to get in on a membership, it is Early Bird, one word for your promo code. Now, Chris, are you an NBA fan? Chris and I doing a podcast for the first time together. Are you an NBA fan?
Huge NBA fan.
And who do you root for?
Not the Knicks.
Not.
That's for sure. From New York, and I would be embarrassed to be a Knicks fan. But I'm kind of like a LeBron fan, so sure. I've kind of jumped on the bandwagon. Wherever he goes, I go. So yeah, I mean, I'm a Lakers fan for the time being, and I'm wondering if they're going to get Kawhi. Man, this is wild if that's the case.
It's I think it's all coming down to Kawhi at this point. Obviously, as he is laying wait to announce where he is signing. I am a Knicks fan, unfortunately, and I'm a Knicks and Jets fan. I'm also a Yankees and Rangers fan. So there's some good and some bad.
So I'm everything. I'm the Jets. I'm the Yankees. So we're like that rare breed, right? Because it's usually Jets, Mets.
That's exactly right.
I'm a huge Rangers fan. So I'm all New York except NBA.
NBA, well, bless your soul, because you made the right choice there. I live outside of Boston, too, so I have that to deal with. But free agency was nuts on Sunday, just making that statement. And clearly, we have, I think, the best NBA product of the DFS offerings out there. So we don't have to talk about it quite yet. Summer League around the corner, but some crazy moves. Obviously, Brooklyn making some big moves. But beyond that, the trade that the 76ers were able to pull off with Goran Dragic going to Dallas and Josh Richardson going back to Philadelphia. Lots of stuff. Awesome day. Pretty cool to see. And again, congrats to you for not being a Knicks fan. I think that's at this point in our world. We just need to celebrate not rooting for James Dolan and Madison Square Garden at this point. But we do have a 5-game MLB slate. And Chris so eloquently put that pitching sucks. I mean, he didn't say those words, but I'll summarize. It's a bad slate for pitching, so you're going to have to understand on a site like DraftKings where they're pricing everybody up no matter what. You're going to have to deal with it. And you see the same on FanDuel. When it's a short slate like this, they're going to take the time to try to figure out who the quote-unquote best pitcher of the slate is. You know, on any other slate, Mike Minor in Texas against a Angels team that doesn't K a ton. That is... they're last right now against lefties in major leagues. They're 15.8% against left-handed pitchers. That's over 884 plate appearances last check here on Fangraphs for the season. It's getting to be a significant enough sample size. Their WRC plus is right in the middle of the road. ISO is right near 177. So not the biggest offensive numbers here, Chris, for the Angels, but they don't strike out. And they walk a decent amount. They don't strike out a ton. Mike Minor is 10-5. What are your thoughts on Minor against the Angels? And is that a price point you could see yourself implementing and trying to work with here? Or do you think we're going to just be sort of bargain basement hunting and trying to figure out the offenses we want most?
It's a great question. I mean, I think you broke it down perfect. They own the lowest strikeout rate in all of baseball on the road against lefties. Mike Minor is a pretty good left-handed pitcher. And surprisingly, he's been better at home this year. Which doesn't make any sense, but that's just the case. And I mean, you have, I think it's 6 Angels, 7 if you want to include Garneau if he's in the lineup, but that are striking out under 18%. I mean, 4 of those guys are in single digits. So yeah, it would be a tough matchup. But then if you also look at the other side of the table, Minor has faced Los Angeles twice this year. And I mean, has put up some pretty good numbers in those 2 games. So you can go either way. And on this slate, I think I'm going to have a few shares of Minor. How about you?
If there was ever a slate to MME, this is it. You know, like if you're trying to figure it out and you want to start getting into mass multi-entry, I think this is it. I think this is the sort of slate where you look at a pitcher like Minor and you can see both sides of it. You can see that in a vacuum, Mike Minor in this matchup, I wouldn't want to roster, but when you compare him to everybody else, the price point, you're going to have some percentage ownership here of him if you're mass multi-entering, just because there is enough upside for Minor, who's been very solid this year. I think that he's a guy that doesn't get enough credit for when he's good and has been very solid, very efficient with his pitches. Now, he is somebody that if you are trying to project out a regression coming, if you look at his ERA versus his xFIP, that xFIP is almost a 2 full run higher than his ERA on the year. So maybe there's some luck involved. You made the point at home, pitching a little bit better. The weather's starting to warm up. So Globe Life will not be kind to a lot of these starters for the Texas Rangers over the course of the summer. And this is a sort of offense that I can think would do a lot of damage. Again, MME-wise, I think you're going to see plenty of Mike Minor simply because it's sort of a slate void of talent. But I probably single entry would try to stay away from him and look for somebody in a higher upside spot, such as our next pitcher here. And Chris, I talked about Logan Allen with some of the Slack chat members we have over there at Awesemo.com. Talked with them at Lofty, talked with Adam. I like understanding minor league pitchers. I play a lot of season long and dynasty baseball. And the Padres are a team that was laden with Lucchesi and Paddock and some of these top flight arms, but they were already on the roster. So there wasn't an idea that a Logan Allen was going to contribute this year. He projected to be a number 3, maybe a number 4 starter, doesn't have a ton of K upside, but is a guy that works deep into games and on sites that reward for innings pitched and outs, and you're going to get some upside from him. 9,200 feels like a pretty high number, but this is now against a Giants team that just doesn't hit. I mean, they don't strike out a ton, but they're pretty putrid against both sides. San Diego, a better hitter's park than San Francisco, but still a pretty good pitcher's park. I don't feel overly comfortable recommending Logan Allen, but again, on this slate, I can see it happening. What's your thoughts on him overall? Where do you see him projecting? And if we go pitcher by pitcher, maybe we'll go through each pitcher and then we'll go back and sort of recommend exactly who we think we're going to roster. But what do you think of Logan Allen overall in this matchup?
So I think when we look at the ownership, when Awesemo's ownership projections come out, I think Logan Allen might be the highest owned pitcher projected for the slate. And I think it's like you said, San Francisco is not a team that scares me. So his price point, Allen's price point, doesn't necessarily scare me either, knowing how bad San Francisco's offense is. I mean, they own the lowest ISO in all of baseball on the road against lefties. They present no power up and down the lineup. And at least Allen is in a pitcher park. He's going against a very weak offense. And I think you said it best. If he can get that 6-7 innings pitched, get into that 90 pitch area, I think he'll be able to work the counts effectively and put up some decent numbers.
Yep, and that's you're projecting a Logan Allen for innings, not strikeouts. Now, if get 5 to 7 strikeouts, that's gravy on top of it. You're looking for a quality start. Talking about a site like FanDuel, you're looking for the deep into game, and at this rate, I say that, and I mean 6 2/3, maybe 7 innings out of Logan Allen at a very efficient pace if he can get there, simply because his pitch count can get up pretty quickly. And San Diego's been pretty specific about their youngsters pitching between 80 and 95 pitches. You see it with Lucchesi, you see it with Paddock, you see it. They do peak over 100 from time to time, but they've been pretty clear cut in trying to keep them down. I'll be honest, if you were to ask me on, again, no context, his price point, I'd say no way. But on this slate, I think he's going to be somebody that honestly, I think every pitcher on this slate is going to have to be considered in some way, shape, or form. And that's just going to be what we're presented with here. But up next is a member of the taxi squad for the Los Angeles Angels. That's Jose Suarez. Now, Trevor Cahill was moved to the bullpen after being activated from the injury list a few days ago. Suarez has struggled in his few starts at the major league level. He has 19 strikeouts, a 5.57 ERA, 1.48 whip. Walks will kill you. That's the cliche in all of Major League Baseball. And he's not striking out a ton. You look at his AAA numbers on the season, which is, 5 starts, 6 games total, just 28 strikeouts in 28 innings. Yes, I get that's a strikeout per inning. But minor leagues, you want to see the elite arms well above that. You want to see them striking out maybe even, let's say, 11 to 12 per nine to translate to being at a higher level and a more efficient level at the major league, on the major league ranks. But if we're looking for a bright side, Chris, this is the Texas Rangers. Yes, it's Globe Life, and I'll check the weather momentarily, but against lefties on the year, that's a pretty high K percentage and a pretty low WRC plus we're looking at. Can we project Suarez to be at least, again, another arm that we may get some lower ownership on and maybe some higher upside?
Looking at Suarez and looking at his price point, it's hard for me to justify, is this someone I could see myself rostering a lot? And I think it's because he struggles with getting into large pitch counts. But going into it, I mean, he's not retiring batters early in the count. He's going long. It's only lasting him 4 or 5 innings pitched. He's not striking out a lot. And to top it off, he's now going on the road. Yes, Texas is probably one of the highest strikeout rate teams in all of baseball against left-handed pitching. However, though, he's not a premier left-handed pitcher, and he's kind of really on the weak side right now. And Texas can't score runs. And going into Texas, I think that's going to be a tough situation for him. So price per dollar and fantasy point projection, I just don't know if I can get there.
Yeah, I'd be intrigued to see what ownership projections are over on FanDuel. So FanDuel slate does incorporate the 5 games, so same exact slate as DraftKings. But he is the 7th most expensive pitcher over on FanDuel at $6,500, just above Jeff Samardzija. Now, again, FanDuel's a different beast because you're looking for quality start. You're only projecting one pitcher, so you have to think of it a little bit differently. But intrigued by what his ownership projection will be. I will point out 2 things here. That one, the over-under is 10. Not as high as I might have expected it. Maybe Minor getting some love there, but Texas only minus 139 on the money line. I don't have team totals up in front of me, but I expected Texas to be a little bit more favored here. And the third thing I want to point out, I know I said 2, I'm going to make it 3. It's supposed to be 90 degrees at Globe Life. That's damn hot. And I think it's worth acknowledging the baseballs are flying out of stadiums no matter what the temperature is. You saw what happened over in London, which I saw a crazy note from Buster Olney, and he said it wasn't his, but it was players, that they felt the stadium, London Stadium there, where I think West Ham plays in the English Premier League, but it's also where they held all the races for the Olympics when the Olympics were there. So I guess they built it specifically with some sort of aerodynamic idea to suppress wind resistance for the runners. And what that did was, for the baseball, there's no wind resistance for breaking balls.
Oh my God.
So they flattened out the breaking ball. Like, you don't think of those things. 20 years ago, you're a baseball fan. That's not even crossing your mind. But now with technology and with the way we look at all these pitches, Chris, and Buster only made sure to say, this is not my thought. This is from the players. They felt as though breaking balls weren't breaking as much as they should have. And if you know that going in, if we had known that about London Stadium, which the data was out there of them building the stadium a specific way, that's an edge. We talk about an edge in DFS. You have that data ahead of time. You're going to get to know these stadiums pretty quickly, especially as these teams travel more and more. But 90 degrees, ball's going to be jumping. I don't like Suarez at all. I think that you can project and talk about Texas having the highest, 28% K rate against lefties. I just think this is a game where he gets absolutely demolished. I will have a lot of Texas Rangers. Joey Gallo is going to be all over the place. Hunter Pence, if healthy, Pence on the IL, so he's still out. I know he's taking he's on the rehab assignment starting Monday, so that's what I saw. I think that any and all Texas Rangers bats will be in my lineups as I build them. I am a hand builder. I say that every time here on the podcast, just so people know my context of how I'm going about constructing my lineups, but I'll be all in there. We don't have a Baltimore starter, so if you're on DK and you're listening to this Sunday night or early Monday morning, they have every Baltimore possible arm listed. So you're going to see Bundy, you're going to see you're going to see Means. We're waiting on that still. I haven't seen anything new. But up next would be Trevor Williams for the Pittsburgh Pirates, 8,100. Now, this is the kind of arm that has some upside. He's not a great pitcher, but he has the potential to go out there and give you 20-plus DK points. I just don't know if the Chicago Cubs offense is one he's going to do it against. It is in Pittsburgh, more of a pitcher's park than obviously pitching in Coors Field. The Cubs on the year are 22.6% K percentage against righties. They do have a 10% walk rate, a WRC plus at 110. Remember, 100 is the median. And then you have an ISO of 209 for the Cubbies against right-handed pitchers. Any interest in Trevor Williams here? Is this a suck it up? It's 5 games. You're going to have some Trevor Williams share, or do you stay away completely?
I think it's fair to say that it's okay to maybe have a few shares of him. Absolutely. Chicago can strike out. And given the fact that Trevor's at home instead of at Wrigley, I think it's a huge plus. You're not going to get a ton of strikeouts. I mean, over 11 games this year, I mean, he's averaging less than, 4.5 strikeouts a game. So it's not going to be the best start in the world, I would say. But I mean, if he could do minimal damage and strike out 4 or 5 guys and pitch 5 or 6 innings, I think it's safe if you're looking to pay up in bats, or if you're looking to get that middle range, cheaper option on DraftKings. I would say that it's fair.
9.5 over under in this game, -120 in favor of Chicago. On the other side is one of my favorite names in Major League Baseball right now, Adbert Alzolay. But we'll talk about him momentarily. Cubs are favored, not surprising there. They're a very good offense. Pirates have some pop. Clearly, we'll talk about some of that in a little bit. I hear you on Trevor Williams, and I think, again, this is going to be a lot for me. This is a sort of slate where I'm going to build my offense first. I'm going to build my what I think is the best offense I can put together, stack, whatever it might be, and then see what cash I have left and see if I'm comfortable with what that allows me from a pitching perspective. I'm feeling it's not going to, because I'm not comfortable with any of these pitchers on this slate, but we are going to talk about a couple more here where we might see some upside. We might see at least some potential here. And one of those names is Tyler Mahle. And this is a guy who I have never once rostered in DFS. I have stayed away every potential time. And he's shown up probably half of his starts, right? I think that's reasonable to say that he's given us decent DFS starts about let's say 3/5 or half the time thus far this year. And I mean, basically 20 DK points or above. When he's going poorly, he is, much like every pitcher in Major League Baseball, he's walking hitters and giving up home runs. When he's going well, he's very efficient. He is able to work inside, work outside, give you the K upside, while also minimizing damage with the home run. We saw that against a great offense with the Houston Astros back a couple of starts ago, and now he has to face a very, very solid one here in Milwaukee in a bandbox, right, Chris? Great American Ballpark. We've seen it time and time again. Is a very small park. It plays small. It plays small for righties. With the lefty power on Milwaukee, it'll play small for them as well. But he's middle of the pack price point on DK. Over on FanDuel, he checks in at middle of the pack as well at 7K, south of Trevor Williams, south of Alzolay, south of Allen, just north of Suarez and Samardzija. Mahle seems like a decent option here. What are your feelings on the righty for Cincinnati?
I like Mahle. I think it's surprisingly, it's a good matchup for him. And the reason why is because Milwaukee does strike out a lot. Top 10 in baseball on the road against right-hand pitching. But the thing with Mahle is, yes, it's at Great American. He actually is way better at home than he is on the road. And he's only given up 3 bombs all year at home. The thing is this, Milwaukee, high, powerful offense. I think it's one of those situations, again, you're going to look at going both sides. Mahle is cheap price, especially on FanDuel, DraftKings for 7,500. But then also, too, he does struggle against lefties, and there's a lot of big lefty bats in Milwaukee's lineup. So I think this is one of those things where you're probably going to want to entertain the thought of the best of both worlds, especially if you're doing multi-entry tournaments. Single entry, I don't know if Mahle would be a way that I would go. But multi-entry, I think I would go both sides.
I think that makes sense, and I am not an expert in hedging, but getting exposure to both sides of this game and both sides of this matchup make a ton of sense if you're building multiple lineups. It just will help out a lot. To echo and to illustrate Chris's point, Tyler Mahle on the year, and splits don't tell you everything, right? Like, it's not going to give you every piece of a detail for a pitcher, but Tyler Mahle on the year is sporting a 271 WOBA against right-handed batters. That is fantastic. That is a number you love to see. His number against lefties, 371, 100 points better. He has given up 11 home runs to lefties, 4 home runs to righties. Again, you made the point about the home runs, not very easy to say, is just 3. K percentage against lefties, just 18.3%. XFIP at 5.22. There's a lot to not like. Home runs per 9, 2.86. You made the point. You got Moustakas here. You obviously have a well-known lefty bat named Christian Yelich. Eric Thames could be in the lineup. So there's a lot of power, but you can balance that out potentially with some upside for Molly. I think the price point makes sense, especially on this slate. And I think, Chris, you said it right. If you're mass multi-entering, you're going to find both sides of this one. You're going to see the upside with Molly. You're going to see the upside with the Milwaukee bats. I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee lefties are some of the highest owned on this slate because of the park and because of the upside. But to your point, I think Molly at least carries some upside where you're going to see him in a decent amount of lineups. Then we do have, I can't roster Jeff Samardzija. I have a personal bias against him. It's just been, I was burned by him too many times over the course of the past couple of years. He's somebody that I struggle getting right. I rarely get him on the good days. And he seems to be this season not to have such fluctuation. It used to be he was great one game, then really mediocre, if not bad, the next. He just feels really mediocre this year. Lots of so-so outings where the strikeout totals aren't that high. The walk totals are up a little bit. This is a matchup against a San Diego team that, surprise, surprise, strikes out a lot. You are seeing Will Myers being phased out seemingly of this lineup, and he was striking out, I think, upwards of 33% on the season. But it's a Padres team at 26.4% K percentage, WRC plus below the median at 96, ISO at 196. So you see a lot of power here. Can Samardzija survive this game and give you enough strikeouts in your mind to be an upside play on DraftKings or FanDuel where he's cheap across the board?
I mean, it comes up to another thing where he's a little bit cheaper than Molly, facing a team that does strike out a lot, second in the league at home against righties, 25.8%. However, though, it's hard to trust him, but he's cheap enough, I would say. And this is a weird slate. Like this slate is really weird. The pitchers are just flat out horrible across the board. So I don't think it's a risk rolling with Samardzija, and especially on a site like DraftKings, if you're looking for a second pitcher, I mean, 7,200, he's cheap enough. And at least, he has somewhat of a good matchup on the road and a pitcher's ballpark against a team that does strike out a lot. I mean, it's one of those things. I think Samardzija is okay to roster for sure.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point here. I might even, he's not an SP1, don't get me wrong, but I think he's the sort of guy, we're going to load up on bats on this slate, right? We're going to have to try to find an edge in picking potential 2 home run batters. Like that's what we're going to be looking at in some of these matchups. Samardzija is cheap enough to give us leverage, and I don't use that in the betting term or the DFS term, but leverage in lineup building and having more cash. He's going to give us the opportunity to roster better bats and better spots. So rostering him and even Adbert down there for the Chicago Cubs at 6,400 might not be that far, for even Hauser at 5,800. I wonder if his nickname's Doogie. It has to be, right? Like that has to be what people in the clubhouse call him. I hope so. I'm old also, so that might be a different story. But this might be the night I roster Samardzija. This might be the night. So I would suggest everyone get off of him because he's going to put up a -4. But I think you're right. I think this is a spot at price point. Now, FanDuel, again, where you're rostering just one pitcher, that's a bold move to go with the Samardzija, but he's just 6,200. And you get enough points across the board with your bats. He's not going to kill you necessarily in this matchup with the high strikeout total. Looking at his StatCast data, it seems he is who he is. And again, to point out fully, expected WOBA is nothing more than what was expected over the games that have happened. It is in no way predictive. Do not try to take XWOBA minus WOBA and say this is what's going to be the rest of the year. XWOBA minus WOBA is what should have happened in previous games. And if you then want to use that to look forward and say, well, he's been performing better than or worse than, fine. But don't try to take it and say it is predictive. It is not. But his XWOBA on the year, Chris, 322. His actual WOBA on the year, 322. So he is right in line with what was expected to happen. So Samardzija gives you what he gives you. And you see that strikeout totals are not what we may have seen years back from him when he was his shark days coming out of Notre Dame as a wide receiver. But he has given you 5, 6, 7 strikeout totals. And against San Diego, I think that's a reasonable number. What would you say 5.5 strikeouts as an over-under is a reasonable number to say for Samardzija against the San Diego Padres, or am I putting that too high?
No, I was actually going to chime in and say, I think it's more than reasonable for him to get 5 strikeouts. I think the real question is, how many runs does he give up with those 5 strikeouts? So, I mean, is he going to give up a couple solo shots and he gives you 6 innings and you get 5 strikeouts? Great. Quality start on FanDuel, get the extra points. And, I mean, it's going to be a nice 12, 14-point outing for you on DraftKings. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where he's going to get you some strikeouts, especially with a San Diego team that is second in the league and you have the pitcher spot. So it's all about, though, how many hits and is he going to be able to keep runners off base?
All right, we have Ryan Yarbrough for the Tampa Bay Rays at 6,500. He is the projected long reliever for the Tampa Bay Rays. He is 7-3 on the year as a long reliever. Pretty crazy. A whip below 1. And it's crazy to see a pitcher with a 4.62 ERA with a whip below 1. And again, counting stats, I'm not saying they're predictive or even really indicative of how good a pitcher has been, but those numbers do contrast a little bit here for Yarbrough. But he's a guy that I know Lofty has, I've seen Adam do it. He's somebody early in the year we were rostering a lot. But it seems DK and FanDuel have figured out pricing on these long relievers, right? We're seeing a pattern. We're starting to see their prices come up. Yarbrough was around 45, 5K a lot last year, and you were able to roster him as your SB2 many times over. Baltimore, Chris, is a team that is not a very potent offense. So we've seen them put up double-digit runs over the past few weeks. Strikeout totals against lefties is at 4th highest in Major League Baseball, 25.7 WRC plus below 190, ISO of 163. Don't have a ton from the right side. Does Ryan Yarbrough enter your plans at all here as a potential cheap option, again, in the vein of a Samardzija or some of the other guys we're still going to talk about as a potential upside play?
So on DraftKings, he's 5 or 700 less than Samardzija.
Yep.
I would rather have Samardzija if I was to pick one of the two. However, though, I don't know what I can get out of Yarbrough, and I don't know. Okay, let's say they keep the neck for an inning or two, and then how long does Yarbrough go? I mean, one thing to also point out is he goes sometimes 6 innings, he goes sometimes 3 innings, and so how long will they keep him on the mound? And also the same thing too is Baltimore. I just don't know if I could see myself rostering Yarbrough. Couldn't see myself paying 6,500 to not know if I'm going to get at least 3 innings from him.
Yep, I get that. I think Yarbrough will be in my plans at least early on. And I'll be honest, I said before, and I mean it, I will build my offenses first. So if I get left with, was it 6,200 on DK or 6,500, Yarbrough I think has enough upside. To your point, though, when you get Stanek for potentially 2 innings, and if Yarbrough is not perfect, you may only get 4 1/3 or 3 2/3 out of him, and that's when your upside really gets minimized, and that's an outcome worth weighing when trying to figure out exactly who you're going to, especially when you do have Hauser and Ozole at cheaper price points. Let's take them as our final 2 pitchers. We don't know who's starting for Baltimore. Pointed that out earlier, so I want to make sure to reiterate that could change things. It could be David Hess. I don't know what his schedule's been down at AAA and whether they call him back up. I don't know much about the current state of the prospect camp for Baltimore, of who they might even go to here to try to get a start. Chris said before we started recording, it could be a bullpen game. That's not a very good bullpen for Baltimore. So if you see that, you'll want to be on the Tampa Bay Rays to a large extent. Hell, if it's David Hess, you want to be on the Rays as well. But Ozole first, and then Hauser. Adbert, as I said, one of my favorite names in Major League Baseball right now, has been pretty solid, though has not pitched at all deep into games. He's given you 4 2/3 and 4 innings respectively. He's thrown 87 pitches in his last outing, coming off 55 in his first. This is a guy who had some pretty decent minor league numbers. He's given pretty solid outings It's been a very obvious choice, though, that Chicago is restricting how much he's pitching. 87 pitches is a high pitch count. I don't and have not seen anything, Chris, that says he's going to be let to throw 100 or 110. I feel like 90 is going to be that high-end cap. Pittsburgh has some obvious power when you talk about Josh Bell, but 6,400 on a site like DK, when we're just simply looking to find our best potential options, I say, why not? Where do you stand with the righty for the Chicago Cubs?
Yeah, I mean, Alzolay so far has definitely shown some signs of electric stuff. And he's 6,400 on DraftKings. He will be facing a Pittsburgh team that is very disciplined at the plate, third in the league at home against righties when it comes to strikeout rate. And they do have some power too, though, especially from the left side and Josh Bell. And then also you have Marte. And you have some guys that are stingy at the plate too, like Newman, Moran. So it's like you said, pitch count. I think it is promising that he went from 55 to 87. He came in as a reliever in his first game and actually, pitched a little bit over 4 innings. But if he pitches 80, 90 pitches and he's 6,400 and he does have some electric stuff that Pittsburgh hasn't seen yet, maybe it is worth giving him at least a shot at rostering, maybe SP2 on DraftKings.
Looks like he's throwing a 4-seamer, a changeup, and a curve. 4-seamer sitting around 95, changeup at 85, curveball around 80. This is StatCast data, readily available. So hit the Google machine and do that. Giving up some pretty soft contact overall, hard hit data, showing some pretty decent numbers there. Woba, pretty decent. Again, this is just over 142 pitches, 19 batted balls. So if you want an alarm bell going off or small sample size alert, it is going off right now. But also check out his minor league numbers. This is a guy, to Chris's point, that I think the Cubs are a big fan of. And I say that because they're protecting him thus far. They're trying to understand how many pitches he can go and what they really expect of him. God damn, he was born in 95. I'm so old. But the fact of the matter is, in 2019, in the minor leagues, 49 strikeouts in 36 innings, that's the sort of rate you want to see, right? You want to see at least 11 Ks per 9. He's right around there. I like him, and I think this is a point where, to Chris's, if he gives you 5 2/3 and gives you that upside, I think he's more than fine here. So he's on the radar for me, and then we'll close it out talking about the Milwaukee Brewers starter on this slate, which is none other. Was it Adam Hauser? I always get his first name wrong because I make fun of Doogie Howser too much. Adrian Hauser. Adrian Hauser is starting for the Milwaukee Brewers. Right-hander, has pitched fairly well over a couple of starts and really poorly in a couple of others. He was a bullpen arm at times, has not started a ton for them this year, has been shuttled back and forth to the bullpen. Oh, no, sorry. Is this a bullpen start? I may be mixing up my analysis here. Let me double check. I don't think Hauser started at all this year, right?
No, he has. He started against the Mariners, struggled, and they pulled him right away. And I was just gonna say. Oh,
that's right. Yep.
This is a red flag pitcher. I don't think I'll have any shares of Hauser, and I think specifically it's because he's probably only going to be in a reliever role, start reliever, probably pitch 2 or 3 innings, and also, it's in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has power up and down the lineup, and to be honest with you, I see Cincinnati being probably the top though in stacks. So I just don't see any upside, nor do I see any reason why you should roster Hauser.
Looking at minor league numbers, PCL, fine. 23 strikeouts, 21 innings, 8 strikeouts and 13 innings in the northern. Was that the? Okay, so 23. Not anything too crazy here. I'm intrigued by you saying that you think the Reds will be highest owned stack, because I think the Brewers, I think this game will be highly owned. I think this is one where you're going to see a ton of ownership. Quickly looking again, this is a 10, and it's an even. It's a pick 'em right now for the line that I'm looking at. I don't think I read off the Giants and Padres, -165, and over-under of just 8 for Samardzija and Logan Allen. That one surprised me a little bit. Thought it'd be at least 8.5, if not 9. And Cubs and Pirates at 9.5, -120 for the Cubs. So after we go through it, Chris, if you look through these starters, who's your favorite? Who's the guy that at least now, and again, we don't hold you to this. We're not going to come back and ridicule you if you go 33% rather than 30% on a specific guy. But what do you got here as who do you think you'll most own on Monday's slate?
I think I'll have most shares of Logan Allen. And I think second highest owned pitcher might be a tie, depending upon how many shares I have and teams I'm rostering. I would say between Minor and Samardzija.
Yep. I think I after going through this, I think Samardzija and Olzale will be where I end up a lot. And that's simply because I think I'm going to have a ton of Milwaukee. I think this is a slate where I get Tyler Mahle's appeal, and I'm not going to badmouth anyone who decides to go there. But Yelich and Thames and Moustakas, I know Keston Hiura is back. This is a guy whose bat I like a lot. I know he's from the right side, but I just think there's a ton of offensive upside for the Milwaukee Brewers. Top stack on the slate for you. You talked about the Reds. Are they your favorite, or do you think they're going to be the highest owned?
Looking at the prices now, it might be hard to roster them depending upon if I go Allen or Minor as a pitcher. I do like Cincinnati. I feel very strongly about Diedrich and definitely Votto, even Stencil and Puig and Suarez. I think it's a really tough matchup for Hauser. I think ballpark, weather, Vegas odds, the lines, I think it's all in favor of pointing to being Cincinnati as the top stack. But here's the thing is if Baltimore rolls out a reliever starter and they go bullpen by committee for that game, I don't see how you can't roster Tampa Bay. I don't see how they can't be my top owned stack. I mean, Baltimore, we all know their bullpen is horrible. And if you get 9 innings of their bullpen, I mean, Tampa Bay's offense is just salivating at that point.
Absolutely. And I do want to point out as we come to a close here, you had some single bullet magic recently, huh? And some PGA?
Oh, man. Yeah, today. It's crazy.
That's pretty awesome, man. Congrats. You can always find our PGA product over there at Osmo.com. Jason and Ben and the rest of the crew in Slack chat. It's probably, I don't mean to offend anyone, the smartest Slack chat we have.
I legit took down 20K today because of Jason's article.
There you go.
Jason had a spot in his article where he talked about Doc Redman as just being put into the field and someone to look at possibly. So then I took that information and I researched him and I saw the price point. I saw the ownership projections. He was nowhere to be owned. And it felt right based on everything that I saw. And I mean, if it wasn't for that premium golf Slack and that premium golf article, I would not be sitting here with a big win of 20K.
A big win and a good way to go into July 4th week. There'll be plenty of places to spend that on DK, I'm sure, or withdraw it, treat the misses. There's some good things to do there. But great stuff. You can find Chris on Twitter at Chris Randone. I am a fellow name on Twitter at Dan Strafford. You can, of course, find Osmo at Osmo_com. Early Bird is your promo code. One word gets you in at 50% off your first month. And I cannot reiterate enough. Monday morning, you get the MLB Strategy Show. The deep dive comes up as your write-up for premium members. Then it's the deeper dive at 5 p.m. and live before lock, obviously leading you up to lock for MLB. 5 games. There is a one-game showdown if you want to play the early at 107. Kansas City, I know, is playing that one. Check out Slack chat. I'm sure there'll be some discussion over there for that. But with that said, we wish you the best of luck. You get EMAC and Adam tomorrow morning right here on the DFS Early Bird.